Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, I'm going to have a gaggle of lesbian OnlyFans models come out here, strip down naked, drink black coffee, and read every single cuss word in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. And that's going to happen in 3, 2, 1. Cool. Now that my Mormon audience is gone, I want to talk to you guys about the Book of Mormon. To offer a very real disclaimer at the beginning of this video. If you are a Latter-day Saint, I want to encourage you to consider not watching this video. I've talked at length on this channel about how painful it was for me to leave religion, and videos like this when I was younger, at best, just made me kind of pissy, or at worst, were kind of emotionally tumultuous for me. And I don't want to unnecessarily impose that on somebody if that's not the kind of headspace that you need to be in right now. There is zero shame in putting this video on the back burner or just not watching it entirely. So, with all those pleasantries out of the way, let's talk about the Book of Mormon. So the internet has been abuzz with talk about the Book of Mormon and Mormonism in general for a couple of years now.
The Book of Mormon that was written 400 years.
Here's the story of Mormonism.
Mormon and the Book of Mormon.
The Book of Mormon.
Are Mormons Christian? What's your favorite loophole?
Soaking. Interested in learning more about the Church of Jesus Christ?
I don't know why it's like popping off so much, but I'm here for it. But I feel like the majority of the discussion about the Book of Mormon is regarding one of three things. It is either trying to prove that it's true, it's trying to prove that it's not true, or it's not about the Book of Mormon, but it's about the events surrounding the Book of Mormon. They'll talk about the crazy translation process, where Joseph Smith put his head in a hat with a seer stone to translate the ancient plates. They'll talk about Joseph's dozens of celestial wives, or they'll talk about Joseph Smith's death through a shootout in a jail cell. And while the events surrounding the Book of Mormon are crazy, I feel like I've heard very little discussion on the actual contents of the Book of Mormon. So as a never-mo, you got Mormons, ex-mos, and never-mos, I guess. I'm a never-mo. I had the privilege of reading this for the first time. Now, big old fat disclaimer, I have read this book exactly one time. I am not a scholar. I am not an expert. This is not my definitive, hey, this is the truth of this book or anything. I apologize in advance because I'm going to get all kinds of names, events, everything very wrong. This is not that kind of channel. So with all that being said, drum roll please. The Book of Mormon is without a doubt the worst religious text I have ever read.
Jared, hey Jared, can you read?
Now, I'll give you some caveats there. It is not the worst religious book. However, it is definitely the worst primary religious document that I've ever read. So I'm comparing it to things like the books in the Old and New Testament, the Quran, early Christian epistles, and the gajillions of Gnostic Gospels. Mark Twain famously said that the Book of Mormon was chloroform in print, as in it was basically like anesthesia. I would describe the Book of Mormon as chewing flavorless gum for a month. In order to explain why I found the Book of Mormon to be so bad, I have to unfortunately give the obligatory explanation of what the Book of Mormon is. The Book of Mormon, like the Bible, is not one book. It is a compendium of books, a small library of books, if you will. My misconception was that, oh, it's all from one era. But no. According to Joseph Smith, these plates reflect ancient writings that were written between the years 600 BC and 400 AD, roughly, thereabouts. So the story is that Lehi, an ancient Israelite, left Israel with his family, built a boat, Noah style, and came to the Americas. From Lehi's lineage come two nations, the Nephites, yay, good guys, boo, and the Lamanites, boo, bad guys, boo, bleh, yuck, bleh, boo, boo. And the bulk of the Book of Mormon is just about these two nations duking it out. And the Book of Mormon endlessly just regurgitates the same cycle that happens between them. So the Nephites are the good guys, they're the, God-fearing Jews, I guess, and the Lamanites are the bad guys because they do bad stuff. And so the Lord raises up the Nephites to go and slaughter the Lamanites, and then they get all their plunder and crap. And so then the Nephites get super arrogant because, oh, sweet, now we're rich and proud and awesome. And then God humbles them because he lets the Lamanites come back and dash them to pieces. And then it's the most annoying, like, Sisyphean task. It's just lather, rinse, and repeat. The Nephites win because God was on their side, and then the Lamanites lost because they sucked. So this battle between the Nephites and the Lamanites lasts for hundreds and hundreds of years. A guy named Mormon compiles, he makes a compendium of all of these other books. So he takes the book of Alma, he takes the book of Jacob, and he truncates them, abridges them, and makes them a little bit shorter, but puts them on gold plates. And then Mormon's son, Moroni, comes and gives an epilogue. He puts his final little kiss on it, and that is the Book of Mormon. Moroni buries the plates in the earth and then dies. He was literally the last of the Mohicans. He was the very last Nephite on the earth. He dies, and then plot twist, comes back. He pulls an Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's back and better than ever. And the angel Moroni shows Joseph Smith where to go to dig up these plates, and then ta-da, huzzah, you found the secret Christian history of ancient American people. After Joseph Smith goes and digs up the golden plates, he does a process of translation. He gets other people to come in his room, and he sticks his head in a hat with a seer stone, alternatively the Urim and Thummim, if I'm saying that correctly, but probably a seer stone, and is, reading a translation from this little stone in a hat. And then Martin Harris, or Emma, his wife, is sitting in a chair transcribing everything that he's saying. Now, it's a very outlandish story, and I feel like people get so caught up in how outlandish it sounds that they just kind of stop there and they don't actually take the time to read the contents of the book. With a story that fanciful, I'm honestly not very hopeful that it's true.
I was a totally strict and devout Protestant. I thought we went to heaven. Yes, well, I'm afraid you were wrong. Well, who was right? Who gets into heaven? I'm afraid it was the Mormons. Yes, the Mormons were the correct answer.
There's a ton of commentary on trying to prove that the Book of Mormon isn't true, and they'll point to things in the Book of Mormon that are anachronistic. For example, they'll point to the fact that there are horses, allegedly, in the ancient Americas. Archaeologically speaking, that's not true. People will get hung up on all of the particular reasons why this text is not true, and to me, those are just less interesting because I just kind of assume that it's not true. I'm happy to hear you out, but I just going into it, unlikely in my mind. I don't know if Mormons really think about it in these terms, but there's kind of an Old Testament and a New Testament portion of the Book of Mormon, because allegedly, many of these books were written hundreds of years in the Americas by Jews or God-fearers, or I don't know how they would describe themselves, prior to the coming of Christ. And then there's a portion of the book that refers to the Americas post Jesus coming. But there's a plot twist in there. Jesus comes to America. I'll get to that in a minute. No spoilers. So what's in the Old Testament portion? Is there anything cool? Anything fancy? Anything awesome? No! It's so boring. I don't know why doctors don't prescribe this over Ambien. It's so dull. So with the book being a compendium of books, there's several different books in the Book of Mormon, you would expect there to be different genres. Oh man, maybe there's a book of poetry. Maybe there's a book of prophecy. Maybe there's fables. Maybe there's really iconic stories. No, it sounds completely monotonous. And I know that Mormon apologists will come along and say, well, it's because all of it was an abridgment from Mormon. And it meanders. It meanders so unnecessarily. The entire Book of Mormon reads like somebody took the King James Bible, threw it in a blender, picked out the most generic sounding phrases, and then just sprinkled it into these narratives about the Nephites and the Lamanites beating the shit out of each other. Alma 8:21. And it came to pass that the man received him into his house, and the man was called Amulek, and he brought forth bread and meat and set before Alma. And it came to pass that Alma ate bread and was filled, and he blessed Amulek and his house, and gave thanks unto God. And after he had eaten and was filled, he said unto Amulek, I am Alma, and I am the high priest over the church of God throughout the land. That was just a random passage. It doesn't say much. Like, it takes such simple stories and stretches them out so unnecessarily long without saying anything. I'm gonna do my best, Book of Mormon impression. Yea, verily I say unto thee, that Jared drank the diet cola. Truly he drank unto it, and it was good. And it was pleasing unto his taste buds, because then it came to pass that as he drank the cola, he felt gassy, and he belched. Yea, verily its sweetness was not from sugar, but verily it was truly due to aspartame. Neither was it sweetened with the sweetness of agave, nor with brown sugar. Much joy, and there was much rejoicing in the seed of Jared, for great was the joy that Jared had in the household of Jared. And it's just so clear that just Joseph Smith, he liked military history, and he thought, how cool would it be if I had this big book of military history battles. But with all of these military battles, there's no theological depth or richness to any of it. It is the same story, and it's the same lesson that's being taught again and again and again, which is if you do bad things, God will raise somebody up to beat the crap out of you. If you do good things, you will prosper and succeed in the land, and great will be your rejoicing. There's nothing in the Book of Mormon that's like the Book of Ecclesiastes, that wrestles with the grand existential dread of reality. There's nothing in the Book of Mormon that wrestles with difficult theological and moral concepts. There's nothing like the Book of Job. There's nothing like the Book of Ruth. It's just be good, good things happen to you. Be bad, bad things happen to you. And it's so pedantic with it. And I think I'm disappointed in reading the Book of Mormon because I'm fascinated by Mormonism as a religion. I'm fascinated by the temple ceremonies. Baptism for the dead, that's a doozy of a time. The first presidency, the Quorum of the 12, what the hell is that? There's a lot of like really interesting and unique elements to the religion that I'm really intrigued by. And then for the crux of the whole thing to just be so underwhelming, it's like, I don't know, I've got a little bit of whiplash.
I'm upset!
The other thing is that the Book of Mormon quotes the King James Bible ad nauseum, which obviously doesn't make sense because these are supposed to be prophets, totally separate from the Israelites, with different continents, not a whole lot of telecommunication going on there. And the Book of Mormon quotes Isaiah ad nauseum. It quotes entire chapters, literally just copied, paste, Command C, Command V. And if you're a believer, you can say like, well, yeah, it's because, God's word never changes and he gave, spoke the same thing to two different prophets and two different continents. But if you're an outsider looking in, it's like, yeah, or maybe Joseph Smith was just, regurgitating what he had memorized that morning. Now, the other thing is that this is another testament of Jesus Christ. So Jesus appeared in ancient Israel, and then he appears again in the Americas. The Old Testament portions of the Book of Mormon, the BC portions of the Book of Mormon, are obsessed with Jesus. Like in the Old Testament, you get once in a blue moon where like a prophet kind of vaguely alludes to this messianic figure. It's kind of shrouded in mystery and foggy language, like, for a child has been born for us, a son given to us, authority rests on his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And everyone's kind of like, tapping their foot and they're like, who could that be talking about? And then Jesus comes on the scene and then Christians are like, that guy. But again, it's sort of like foggy, cryptic language, right? In the Book of Mormon, it is so laughably on the nose. It's like Joseph Smith thinks he's being clever and I just feel insulted. Okay, 2 Nephi 25:19. For according to the words of the prophets, the Messiah cometh in 600 years from the time that my father left Jerusalem, according to the words of the prophets and also the words of the angel of God. And his name shall be Jesus Christ, the Son of God. This is supposed to be 600 years before Jesus. They've got his name figured out. In other portions, it knows who his mother's name is. It talks about his disciples. It talks about his crucifixion. Hell, they probably got his zip code and social security number on file. Like, I don't know where the disconnect is, because apparently the prophets in the Old Testament, in rural Israel, those dudes must have been like half-assed morons, because when God gave them prophecies regarding the Messiah, they were all like, cryptic and hazy. Meanwhile, the prophets in rural America in the 6th century BCE, those dudes were like, oh yeah, Jesus Christ, yeah, he's going to be here in like 600 years, probably like 4 p.m. He's going to have long, blonde, wavy hair, blue eyes, 6'2". The way in which the Old Testament portions of the Book of Mormon talk about Jesus are so lofty and so like exalted that it makes the Book of John look like an afterthought. Like if you grew up as a Latter-day Saint and you've only read the Book of Mormon, you might not realize like how sparse messianic prophecy is in the Old Testament. There are very few verses that actually predict a coming Messiah, and most of them are really foggy. So I'm fascinated by like the evolution of Christology in the early centuries of the church. Generally speaking, scholars talk about like how, Mark has a low Christology, right? Is Jesus really God or considered God in the Gospel of Mark? And then he gets a little bit more exalted in Matthew and a little bit more exalted in Luke. And then in John, he's like a pre-existent being. Well, step aside, John, because the Book of Mormon here, 600 years before Jesus, it's already calling him God. It's calling him the divine Logos. And even beyond that, it talks about, redemption for the forgiveness of sins through Jesus Christ, hundreds of years before he ever came to earth. It talks about being baptized in his name, which would have been a concept totally foreign to pre-first century Jews. It's confused. It doesn't make sense. He is constantly quoting from like portions of the Old Testament that wouldn't make sense to quote at that time. And then he's consistently talking about New Testament themes that are supposed to be talked about like hundreds of years before Jesus ever comes to earth. The Old Testament portions of the Book of Mormon have more New Testament theology in them than the New Testament. So all the prophets leading up to the coming of Jesus, they are so amped about Jesus. They know when he's coming. They are waiting around ready for him. They are just, sitting with their legs crossed because Jesus is going to come, guys, and he's coming to the Americas too. And I'm not gonna lie, like 3/4 of the way through the Book of Mormon, I'm not vibing with it. It's not my cup of tea, but I'm starting to get excited because I know that Jesus makes his big cameo in 3rd Nephi, the 11th book in the Book of Mormon. And when he finally comes on the scene, he makes his grand entrance. What does he do? Nothing. He does nothing except quote the Sermon on the Mount almost in its entirety. He just regurgitates it. And then, it says like, hey, you guys know how to baptize? Cool, later. And dips. You could have had so many cool stories. You could have done so many interesting things with this narrative, but it's just vapid. Like, I'm like actually upset about it because I'm thinking about like the crazy, alternative worlds that you could have made with this story. Think of all the cool parables he could have told. Think of all the cool, new miracles that he could have done. Oh man, he parted the corn, like Moses parted the Red Sea. I don't know, but like something. But he literally just comes to the Americas, looks to the Nephites and is like, hey y'all, I preached this sermon over there on a mountain in this place called Israel. I got a dip, but ditto, basically. Okay, later. Or how wilt thou say to thou brother, let me pull the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam in thine own eye. Thou hypocrite, first cast the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast the mote out of thy brother's eye. So I want to contrast the Book of Mormon with other famous Jesus fan fiction. Man, like so many of the Gnostic texts have Jesus doing really interesting things. If you're going to make up a story about Jesus, you could have made it so cool. For example, in the infancy Gospel of Thomas, you have Jesus in his infancy, from the ages of like 5 to 12. It's a huge gap in the biblical Gospels, right? He's born and then he's 12 all of a sudden. What was he like as a toddler? I wonder. That makes some good, interesting stories, right? So in the infancy Gospel of Thomas, Jesus, as a young kid, straight up kills other kids. Like one kid bumps into him and he's like dead. It's awesome. And then at a different time, he gets accused of killing a different kid, the one that he didn't kill. And Jesus, indignant, like runs over to the kid, raises him from the dead, and is like, hey, did I kill you? And the kid's like, it wasn't you, Jesus, It's such a fun story. In the Acts of Thomas, you have Jesus selling the Apostle Thomas into slavery and sending him to India. And then in the Gospel of Judas, you have Jesus pulling Judas aside and saying, hey, plot twist, you're not the betrayer, you're actually on a super secret awesome heavenly mission, and you're actually my most legit disciple. Like the, Bible extended universe here is really cool when the Gnostics do it, but Joseph Smith is just bad at it. Like he spends the first 3/4 of the Book of Mormon really hyping up that Jesus is gonna come to America. Let's get super duper excited about Jesus. And then when he finally comes on the scene, he's a mannequin. He's not a fully fleshed out character. He doesn't have anything interesting or unique to say. He just regurgitates Jesus's quotes from the King James Bible, and then he leaves. I'm just upset that he didn't have Jesus giving a sermon on Mount Rushmore. Is that too much to ask? When was Mount Rushmore made? Shit. Now I'm the walking anachronism. So I think part of the reason why I'm making this video at all is to just voice my dissatisfaction and maybe even a little bit of my cognitive dissonance, because I've met so many wonderful Mormons recently, really intelligent Mormons recently, who begged and pleaded for me to read this book, and I did. And it's pretty underwhelming. And I don't say this at all to crap on Mormon people. I don't say this to make fun of Mormonism. If anything, I'm just perplexed because there's 17 million people who think that this is the most beautiful book ever written, and I want to understand that. One of the most common apologetics that Mormon missionaries will give is that, well, the Book of Mormon has to be a true revelation from God because Joseph Smith only had a 3rd grade education, and there's no way that this could have come about by somebody with a 3rd grade education. But it kind of reads like it was written by somebody with a 3rd grade education. And like, it tries to be deep. It has entire passages that goes into, sin and regeneration and salvation, but it's so dense and cluttered with this King Jamesian jargon that doesn't have any place there that it feels inaccessible. And this is all such a wild oversimplification, and I apologize, but this is just how I feel just coming off of the heels of this thing. In talking to some of the Mormon missionaries, sometimes they'll say like, yeah, but I read the Book of Mormon and I got this sense of peace. Like a lot of converts will talk about that. And my reaction to that is just like, man, I feel like you could have read anything, sitting down at a park bench or reading a hardcover book or a softcover book. Maybe that was the most relaxing thing in the world to you, and you mistook that for, spiritual profundity. I know that there are a ton of really intelligent Latter-day Saints out there who are chomping at the bit, ready to correct all the places where I was wrong or give a retort or a response to all the areas where they think that they can answer some of my questions. And I'm here for it, man. Because I'm an idiot with a big mouth, but I don't want to shut down discussion. Again, I'm sure I got some details wrong. Please forgive me. Turn the other cheek or something. But I hope that you guys can see my heart in this, because this is not, again, like some big, epic takedown of the Book of Mormon and why I think that it's not true. My intent is to give honest feedback to the 10 or so Mormon missionaries that I've talked to over the years. They've each individually asked me to read the Book of Mormon, and I've finally done it. And I feel like I can't continue to have a productive and healthy conversation with them unless I first air out my list of grievances about what I really think about this thing. This feels so bizarrely weird to say, but over the past maybe 2 years, I've really developed a love for both the Latter-day Saint and ex-Mormon communities for like very different reasons. But I appreciate and value them both. And I hope that in, griping about some parts of this book, I'm not advocating for people to bully or crap on Mormons. I've got some hangups with this book, but I've consistently had really wonderful encounters talking to my Mormon neighbors. And I would love to continue those conversations. I've spoken my piece. I've said what I needed to say. The floor is yours. I'm happy to listen. And if you're a never Mormon, I would highly encourage you to read the Book of Mormon. If you're on a time crunch, I would say just read the book of 3rd Nephi, see the hubbub about Jesus having a second ministry in the Americas. Mormonism is not going away anytime soon. It's one of the fastest growing religions in the world. And it is a religion that has dramatically shaped the landscape of American religiosity, and it will continue to do so. I am so fascinated by this group. And even though I disagree with Latter-day Saints on maybe everything, I am still grateful that they are here and that they are people who are trying to make sense of the universe and life and everything in it. And for that, I'm grateful for them. So, my name is Jared. I'm an atheist. Oh, I guess this isn't an episode of Atheist Church Audit. My name is Jared. I'm an atheist. Read a book of Mormon. That was an awful ending. I hope my editor doesn't leave that in the video. Oh God, I'm fucked. Nephi, the anti-Nephi Lehis, there's some group like that. The anti-Nephi Lehis, the Lehi Nehis, something like that. I'm hoping that all of this is just the end of the video and there's like randomly like credits scrolling behind me and like the cute little coffee shop like jazz music playing behind me. With the, yeah, maybe I can put like two recommended videos on it. Well, the first time I ever kissed my girlfriend, I was like,